Good evening and welcome to another edition of Filmnut. I am your host, Jeff Schubert. Glad you can join us. Well, according to the legendary acting coach Stanislavski, there are no small parts, only small actors. What does that mean? It means you bust your butt for a role that only has a few lines because you never know where it's going to lead you. Such was the case when Jack Coleman auditioned for a 4-line role that didn't even have a character name. It was just an acronym, HRG. As fans of the NBC show Heroes know, Jack has turned HRG into one of the biggest and most complex characters on the show. Of course, many also remember Jack from his work as Steve Carrington from the show Dynasty, big hit show in the 80s for those of you who are a little on the young side. Now for the man who has the most popular pair of glasses outside of maybe Clark Kent, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the Salem Strangler, Jack Coleman. Thanks for coming on, Jack.
The Salem Strangler.
Does that bring back a couple of memories?
Bust that one out of the vault.
That's right. That was Days of Our Lives, your TV, how you broke into the business, right?
It was. That's how I broke into the TV biz. Yeah, Days of Our Lives. That was a long time ago.
Well, more currently, and I want to get to it right off the top for fans of Heroes, it premieres this Monday, September 21st, and with a new time, right?
8 o'clock, yes, and that's for those of you who have not been paying attention. 8 o'clock, not 9 o'clock in our normal time slot.
We're very much looking forward to it based on where it left off. I know recently yourself and Tim Kring, the show's creator, a bunch of the cast were at Comic-Con. For those who weren't there, there was like a panel discussion, Q&A. Spoiler alert, guys, what can you reveal about season 5 that was talked about there? Nothing that, I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah, no, it's... As you may or may not know, the name of the volume, this is Volume 5, Season 4, Volume 5.
That's right. Starting at 8 o'clock, not 9.
Not 9 o'clock. Yeah, you have an abacus and a slide rule. We can get through this.
That's right.
The name of the volume is Redemption, and pretty much everybody is on some kind of a redemptive path. So, but of course, it's going to be impossible for everyone to just live happily, ever after in harmony together. And there's Robert Knepper and Ray Park and Don Olivieri who we find in this the carnival, and it's a kind. The idea is basically back in the 60s, some people formed the company and some people went underground, and this is the group that had gone underground. And maybe not the 60s, maybe they're a little bit later than that. But anyway, the point is that rather than trying to form the company and make this sort of go the corporate route, they went under. And you figure that you go to the carnival, and the strong man is a strong man, and the fire breather actually breathes fire, and all that kind of stuff. So, but there's a darker edge, and then there's also Knepper plays Samuel, is a very charismatic guy who starts recruiting. He's tired of being underground, and he's trying to avenge his brother's death, and he starts coming after us.
Now, the different volumes of Heroes, as they're called, some of them tend to have kind of like their own feel. Does this volume come closer to any of the previous ones?
Well, this volume feels a lot like the first to me, in that characters are really grounded. There's been a tremendous emphasis on character and connection and who everybody is to everybody else and what they do in their lives. And some of that had gotten lost early on in the third season, and by the second half of the third season, I feel like we really got back on that track. And I feel like this volume is very much about who everybody is in their lives and who they are to each other. The Claire HRG relationship is stronger than ever, and so you see who is important to whom, and people are just much more connected both to each other and to their own lives. So
I mentioned the popularity of your glasses, and we've mentioned HRG. For those of you who might not know, let's put them together. Hornrimmed Glasses, That's
true. And in the pilot, just so you know, actually the character is referred to as Man in Hornrimmed Glasses.
Oh, there you go.
And it was the first episode after the pilot that he actually became HRG.
That's funny, man. Okay.
Yeah, that's even more.
That's even more generic.
Amorphous.
Exactly. That's great. Subtext is a normal thing that actors have, where you're saying one thing and maybe you're feeling another. But I feel like your character, subtext has subtext has subtext. I mean, how do you keep track of it all?
Well, early on there were always two things going on with the character. Usually there was the family and then there was work, and they were often at odds with each other. So, they wrote it really well that lines had multiple meanings, and you just, sometimes you have to lean on the irony, and sometimes you have to back off the irony and trust the audience to understand that you are talking about two different things, even if it seems like you're only talking about one. And then after a while, you get to play with it a little bit, where there's a certain, you feel like the audience may know you well enough, and may know the character well enough that when you do a certain thing, they understand what that means, and
whether it be a look or
a look or a line, or whether it's something about morally gray, or or the iconic shot over over the back of my head through the horn-rimmed glasses. They know that something nefarious is going on. So there's just a lot of different ways of layering things, and obviously for an actor, it's a great privilege to be able to have lines that have multiple meanings.
Well, I think the trick for an actor, and you pull it off brilliantly, is you don't overact it. It's a look, it's an inflection, but you're really feeling it, and it's so. I think it works best when it works subtle, and you're brilliant at the subtle nuances.
It has to be true. It has to feel true. You have to feel like the person means what they say. One of the best compliments I ever got was from a friend of mine who's a fabulous actor, and who said to me that you sort of walk right up to the edge of where you may be winking at the audience or nodding at the audience, but I mean, I'm sure they've crossed that line many times, but you want to try to be as truthful as you can, and let the double meaning play itself. Don't try to play it too much.
I want to give a shout out to the Ninth Wonders Heroes message boards. Big fans of yours over there, and they're always a big part of all our interviews with Heroes cast and crew members. Blue Rivers has a question from there. How much freedom are you given to kind of mold the character? Did Tim Kring, or anyone else for that matter, have a set idea for how they wanted Noah to act, or were you given a bit of room to just kind of see where it took you?
It's a very good question, Blue River. Blue River, is that right? Okay. Wider than a mile. I'm sorry, that's Moon River. But yeah, it was written as a guy who was slightly anachronistic and yet unknowable. And I think it was really in the first episode after the pilot that was working with Alan Arkush, and it was the scene where Claire comes home, and we have this little chat, and we're going to try to find your birth parents, and we have this very touching sort of emotional father-daughter scene, and she walks away, and then you see me looking at the videotape of her when attempting to kill herself, and obviously not dying and regenerating, and then you see that and Alan's direction was very pivotal, and he said, okay, now as soon as she leaves the room, now you're the company man again, and let's see the curtain drop. And at that moment, I sort of, okay, yeah, I know who this guy is. When he's on, he's on. He's sort of the ultimate method actor. And so when he's being father, he's father, and when he's being company man, he's company man. And it's only when they start to collide that things get messy. But that was, it wasn't so much Tim saying, do it this way, do it that way. It was more that they started to see how it worked on multiple levels, both in the writing and in the performance, and then they started.
Well, I would have to think, since it was originally written as Man in Horn-Rimmed Glasses, 4 lines, that the emphasis was maybe on some more of the other characters, but then they saw what you brought to it, and all of a sudden a light bulb went off. Hey, we can really expand this.
And clearly that light bulb went off even before I mean, it's in the pilot when you see him, this shadowy guy come home, and he's the father of the cheerleader. Right. He's Claire's father, and it's like, oh my God, the poop is going to hit the fan. You know what I mean? It's like it was already built into the pilot, and then so they just started running with it kind of right away, and I think because he was a guy who studied them, who chased them, who followed them, this character could be a real story engine. So he could really connect dots, connect characters. Somebody else could come on, and I would already have a history on them. I'd have a dossier, and they'd probably have a bone to pick with me. So there's all kinds of ways to expand it.
And you talk about the two different worlds colliding. I think that's what's really fun for the audience, is the anticipation, of how is he going to work? How is HRG going to work his way around this one?
Yeah. Well, and it was brilliantly built up in the first season too. Of is he good? Is he bad? Look, he seems to be a loving father, but then he's doing this, so maybe he's not. And is he just harvesting her, or does he really care about her? Right. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? So and then finally coming to a sort of a culmination in episode 17, Company Man, where he got to see that he essentially was a good guy.
For now.
For now,
you never know.
Sacrificing for his daughter.
Andrew would like to ask, which season storyline out of the 3 aired seasons were your favorite? Do you have a favorite volume, favorite season? Because seasons are really broken up into volumes. They're almost unique entities.
Well, the first season was an entire volume, and I think it was after that that they thought, let's break it into smaller segments. The first season had lightning in the bottle, and it's the kind of thing that you can never recreate that first season again. So there was a magic to that, which was great. And I think the whole build up to personally for me, for the reveal of what was revealed in Company Man was a great build. But also, season 2 had an episode called Cautionary Tales, where it was a really, really well constructed script, and there were basically 3 stories, and they were all about fathers and children. And there was Hero and his father and his funeral, and then Elle and her father, and HRG and Claire, and they were all kind of interconnected. Hero was on his own path, but every one of them echoed and amplified every other story. So that was a favorite of mine, and I don't know. There've been a lot of really fun moments.
A couple things we talked about so far. There was one scene you had with Christine Rose early on in season 3, where you're kind of going over what the new scheme is to undo the company or to be the good guys, and she says you realize something to the effect of, maybe you can help me with this, something to the effect of, Noah, you realize you're going to have to live in a shade of gray again, and your response about you're most comfortable in that area of gray.
Yeah, something like, I'm comfortable with morally gray.
You're comfortable with morally gray, and the look on your face, that part of your personality and your love for Claire, your daughter on the show, to me really kind of sum you up, because even when I think you're evil, your love for Claire always seems real to me.
Yeah, well, and it is, and it has to be, and I think that's what was revealed in toward the end of the first season, was that that it is a genuine love for his daughter, and so, and then I think that's been one of the real emotional touchstones of the show. From time to time we have to go back to who they are, like the Petrelli brothers and Mama Petrelli with the brothers, and
Nathan and Peter with their little sibling issues.
Nathan and Peter, and then Chris Rose and the 3 of them, and the Bennetts, and so I think that it's they always come back to that, and it is real. But the whole morally gray thing is, he's very Machiavellian. I mean, you see it in the second season, I think it was, where I go and I kill my mentor in Russia. Right. And I think they thought that I had been getting pretty noble and very comfortable in a good guy role, and they wanted to really show the guy's teeth again and make people question their assumptions about him yet again, and go, well, you know what, maybe he is not such a good guy. So it's always on a bit of a pendulum. Yeah,
it's great. Talk about working with Hayden, and because I think
Hayden
Panettiere.
Nicely done.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
I still can't spell it all these years
We were
later.
practicing before the show. He was coaching me. Thank you very much. But
Baker of bread.
She does such an incredible job with the angst that she's going through, being your daughter, hating you when she finds out the truth, but then accepting that you are complicated, your moral gray issues and so forth. What's it like working with her?
It's been amazing, and from the very first day, and I just think that Hayden and I hit it off right away. I think we had good chemistry right away, and as we were talking earlier, the thing, she's become such a celebrity that I think people forget what a good actor she is, and you watch her in some of these episodes, the episodes where she's really had meaty, complex things to do, and she just kills it. She just nails it. She's a really, really talented, multifaceted actor, and I think that from the very beginning she just sort of plugged in, and we started working well together right away, and I think that's a big part of why I stuck around on the show.
That's great. I've heard you talking in other interviews about the predatory nature of the media and some of the things Hayden has to deal with, with that. I think she handles it well, and there's a big difference in how some stars handle it versus others. There's no class for young actors coming up on how to handle the media, like maybe in the NFL or in some of those pro leagues, they teach their rookies how to deal with that stuff. What advice do you have for actors out there who might be coming up, who, if and when their careers take off, how they should handle the media?
you know, that's. I actually think it would be a great idea for on movie sets and television sets to have a class for young actors, and yeah, I don't know who would teach it. I don't know what they would tell. You know, the single biggest thing is you have to have a really strong sense of who you are and who you're not. You know, being around Hayden all the time, people just really truly have no idea. I mean, she's followed everywhere. Every time we're out on location shooting, they're always paparazzi, and they shoot with these giant lenses, which give that sort of voyeuristic, you know, thing. If you're just walking across the street, that makes you look guilty. There's just something about those really long lenses that looks like surveillance. And it looks like you're eating an ice cream cone, and it looks like you're shooting up. Right. You know what I mean? There's just something about, and that's the whole idea. And the whole bread and circus of this thing is just, I'm just always amazed and disappointed at how interested people are in other people's failings or other people's shortcomings or possible personal disasters, or it's just, there's just got to be something else in your life that's more interesting than that. Turn it off, throw it out. Just don't. I don't understand it. But she has to deal with it on a scale that, you know, it's kind of astonishing. And if you take a teenager, your average teenager, and throw them into that situation and say, you know, fend for yourself, you're talking about a complete train wreck, and you know, she's anything but that.
Absolutely. And some of the new ones out there, they come in, they're gullible. It's like you see certain ones fall off the same cliff that previous ones did, because there's no one to kind of give them the heads up and watch out for this, and it's not what you think it is.
Right, and it's
careful.
also, I mean, you're a teenager.
Yes.
You know, you're by definition in conflict.
Right.
So, and then you add all this scrutiny. And who's going to hold up to that? And
right.
The fact that she has is amazing to
Absolutely.
me. And you know, my feeling is, if you don't like it, if you're out there and you don't like it, don't buy the magazine. Don't watch the show that's just all about people sitting around spitballing and, you know, how are we going to get Lindsay, and it's just disgusting, and it is predatory, and it is designed to attack young women.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of questions. I want to start getting to more of them. Timer effects. The glasses almost seem to have a life of their own. In scenes that you're not wearing them, do you feel like you're not in character completely?
Yeah, a little bit. Every once in a while, I forget to put them on, and then something like, you know, right. it doesn't until I'm fine until I remember that I don't have them on. But and then there are some scenes, obviously, where I don't have them on, and I do kind of feel like somebody else for a minute, but also some of that stuff, like some of the flashback stuff without them, is kind of fun, because it allows you to be a slightly different version of that same character.
Well, one great scene you had without them was when you wanted to trick Danko into revealing that Sylar was alive, because you were like trying to convince him that you shapeshifted as you,
That's right.
as Sylar, but you were still you, so you didn't have the glasses on. That was great.
Yeah, that was, and sort of trying to imitate Zach somehow, which everybody has done at some point or other, because, you know, even in the first season, Adrian did that, and I think he did it last season as well. So, you know, poor Zach, he gets to watch all these people try to do these, you know, dime store imitations of him, which are all, you know, pale imitations of what he does.
Do you want to do one now?
I do not.
Okay.
But thanks for asking.
Sure. Fisher60 asks a question that I'm sure you've never been asked before. What superpower would you like to have?
I would like to have the power to turn that question into cash.
Have you been asked it quite a bit then?
My salary on the show would pale in comparison to how much money we'd all be making if we had a dollar for every time we get asked that question. I don't know. What power would I want to have? That was it. That's the power.
Do you think it's possible that at some point you would have a power, but they would retro it and say he's had it all along, but he's just kept it from everyone?
It's conceivable. I hope not. Mm-hmm. I cannot tell you how happy I am not to have a power. I think it's it can get you into trouble. It can paint you into a corner. It can make you, because the power has to be used. I thought, you have to see it, otherwise what's the point of it? Now, if you're doing one of these, bouillabaisse things that Sylar and Peter do, where they have sort of everything, that's a lot easier because you can do anything at any particular time. But if what you do is you shoot flame out of one finger, then that's your trick, and you're going to have to see you do that.
That's right.
And sometimes it works really, really well, and sometimes it can become forced. I'm very happy not to have a power.
One of the interesting things about your character is you kind of evoke fear without having a power. You kind of evoke your ability is your pull that you have with we're not knowing what you're doing and all the things that you're up to.
I certainly early on I think what the power was the power of knowledge, because yes. I especially early on knew more than any of the people with these abilities knew even about themselves, and so that makes you a powerful character, and you start to learn the world, and you can help. Like when we busted out of Primatech, and I was telepathically communicating with Matt and trying to get Ted to burn, what was it, burn hot not bright, or burn bright not hot, whatever it was, and somehow that he knows how these things should work sometimes better than the people who have those abilities.
Absolutely.
So that's that having knowledge is always good because it makes you look smart even if you're not.
Color Be Toxic would like to ask, do you ever wonder what goes on at Ninth Wonders, a site dedicated to heroes? So we mentioned it a little while ago. Are you aware of Ninth Wonders?
I am aware of it. Do I ever wonder what's going on?
Or do you ever look at it?
I've checked it out from time to time, yeah.
There's a whole section for the Bennetts.
Oh yeah, you know what? There's probably a lot of places on the site I haven't seen, but I'll check out sometime. Every once in a while, I'll sort of check out a discussion of something.
It's appropriate to bring it up now. You do have a blog where you write about the show, and even your vacation, I think you posted up there.
I do, and I've gotten a lot of flack from my family. Not my immediate family, but not my immediate family, not my wife and daughter, but my siblings, who think I'm far too liberal with information about my family. So I may be backing off on some of that. I don't know. The blog's fun because you get to, hold forth and pontificate, and it's kind of one-way dialogue, which is easy.
So now, for people who are interested in that is the HRG Files on televisionwithoutpity.com.
That's correct.
I think if you go to televisionwithoutpity.com, and maybe you'll have to search for the HRG Files or something, that's where
if you Google HRG Files, it'll take you right to it.
Yeah, so if you're interested, you can go there. Drink Moxie, who was your favorite guest star that you've worked with? Could be a hero's question, could be a non-hero's question, because you've worked on other shows.
I got to say, one of the great things about this show is the guest stars that we've had come through and I've gotten to work with. There's been some, from Malcolm McDowell to Eric Roberts to Chris Eccleston, we've had great actors on the show. George Takei and Kristen Bell is not really a guest star.
Right.
She was on too much to be a guest star. I loved working with her. I loved working with Nora Zehetner. It's been pretty great on this show to have the amount of wonderful actors that we've come through.
One little brief storyline that's coming to my mind now that I really loved of yours, just the payoff of it. And it wasn't even in the more popular season. It was in 2, when you were working in the print store, the copy store, whatever it was, and you were really undercover, and your manager, Geek Boss, was really sticking it to you, and when you finally explode on him, I loved it. That was great.
That was fun. I mean, those things are always fun to do because it makes you look like such a tough guy. Yeah. And, you grab a guy's finger, and he was fantastic, and he just flipped himself over on his back every time. And, that's fun. You get to be. It's just fun to be the cool tough guy. And I didn't get to do that a lot early on in my career, so I'm enjoying it.
Tom K would like to ask, what's been your most challenging episode to shoot? Company Man, back in season 1 was incredible. Great job, by the way.
Thank you. Company Man was the most challenging because it was, I think it was a 15-day shoot, and I was in pretty much every scene, and there was the 2.5-page scene in Japanese, and it was coming right off the awards thing. I think that we'd gone to the Golden Globes, and I got home about 1:30, and I had to be on the set at 4:30, and then went straight into the Japanese scene, and it was, and that was the very first scene of that entire episode. So that was the most challenging because it had a physical challenge to it on top of everything else. But there've been some, there've been a lot of challenging things. But one of the great things about this show is, being on an ensemble show is that it gets mixed up. I mean, you talk to Hugh Laurie, or Tony Shalhoub, or these guys who are the eponymous characters. Right. I mean, they just don't get it down minute. They're just getting hammered all the time. So we've had our challenges are minimal compared to that. And so is our paycheck, but the challenges remain reduced.
We just got to start paying you for that question.
Yeah,
we were talking before,
I can hear people just crying for us out there.
That's right. Playing that violin, that's a great new commercial.
That's a good one.
We were talking before we came on about, though, how much time you get to shoot, how you get the time, you get as many takes as you want or need.
Well, it depends. Yeah, I mean, in general, the directors are very generous with that, and if you feel like you just haven't gotten it, they almost always give you another shot at it. It is television. You do have to move on, but we have long days, and one of the reasons we have long days is because people want to get it right, and they'll go that extra take to try to get it right, and there's tremendous attention to detail as well as production value in Heroes.
So I did mention Dynasty in the introduction, classic series, internationally famous, renowned. That was last episode of that, I believe, was in '88. Or
I think 89.
89, okay.
I think 89.
And your first episode of Heroes was 2006, I believe, right? So what's the difference between being on a hit series then and now? The way, from how it's shot, from the public interest and so forth?
Well, there's so many differences. I mean, what Heroes was, Dynasty was basically, 3 networks. And now there are a million channels on, and all the cable channels are doing original programming and doing it well and getting good ratings and providing real competition. So there's it's just a completely different world. It's so scattered and down. If you wanted to watch Dynasty or Dallas back in the mid-'80s, you had to sit down on a Friday night or a Wednesday night at the prescribed time, and you sat down and you watched it. Then eventually you could record it on your little VCR. And now it's everything is being recorded and downloaded, and buying the DVD box set and all that stuff. And there's so many different ways to get product. Having said that, the effect is still kind of the same. I mean, Heroes is huge overseas. I've been to Europe a couple times since the show started, and everywhere I go, they're fans of the show. They watch the show.
Is it perceived any differently? Are you perceived differently there than here?
Yeah, I think that there's a little bit. I mean, there's still there's so many similarities to how people respond to it, but in Europe there's they're much less likely to just sort of walk right up to you and slap you on the back and go, "Man, I love your show," and but people are very into it, and I was just shocked at sort of everywhere we went that people were aware of it and recognized me, and I wasn't expecting that.
Let's see. Kupchak would like to ask: at what point during the first season did you know that Heroes would have a huge following, and what do you think led to such a huge fan base? I am fairly circumspect about all these things. I have a feeling that, I've been around a long time. I've seen sure things not be sure things. So even though I knew from reading it that it had great potential, it wasn't really personally until probably 3 or 4 episodes in when the ratings were not only holding, but they were building. And I thought, okay, this is good. And probably about the 8th or 9th was when friends of mine who were in the business were saying, you can stop looking at the ratings now. You're okay. You're a hit. The show's going to do well. So I'm not one of those people who I knew it had a good chance, but I'm never one that thinks this is a lead pipe cinch. Nothing can go wrong. Well, you mentioned in one of your earlier answers about it being lightning in a bottle, and I think it was really fresh and an original way to demonstrate people evolving with superpowers, or you guys like to call it abilities, on Heroes, and just the human stories that go with it, as opposed to, you might have your superhero comic shot once in a while, but it's not a comic book series.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, to me, the thing that I found appealing about it, and I think broadened it beyond just a superhero show or a sci-fi show, was that it was a combination of superhero and kitchen sink drama. You know,
Yes.
and these people had problems, and they had. And you know, the brothers loved each other, but they were always at each other's throats. And the younger brother never felt like the older, you know, Peter Petrelli never felt that Nathan Petrelli took him seriously, or was understanding him, or was hearing him. And so there's that great twist at the end of the pilot, where, you know, Peter, who's thinking, I think I can fly. I'm dreaming I can fly, and he jumps off, and then it's his brother who comes and flies and saves him. And that's, you know, I mean. I just think it had a real emotional resonance that surprised people.
Yes.
And I remember the great scene in the third or fourth or fifth episode, I think maybe the fourth, where you see future Hero. You see Hero as the sort of the badass samurai from the future.
With perfect English.
With perfect English, and all the you know, the smile's gone, and the innocence is gone, and the subway train is frozen, and it was I just think there were these just moments and iconic images that caught people off guard and really captured the imagination.
You know, and it takes a village. You know, great writing with great acting and great direction, all coming together.
Yeah, and it looked like a movie. You
Yes.
know, and it still is. I mean, the production value is tremendous.
And let's see how I do on this one. Rama Murthy,
Sendel?
Sendel?
Rama Murthy.
Rama Murthy, yes. I mean, his intros and exits, I mean, I still love them.
Yeah.
You know, him and Morgan Freeman can tell me a bedtime story anytime they're flying.
No, I know. It's he's got a great voice, and he does that stuff really well. And you know, people have always liked to make fun of it, and which is fair game. Apart from his father's research, you know, he will always be known as the voice of the show.
You know, you make fun of it now, but you remember, you flash back to season 1. That was really cool and new, and
and it was also it bookended the show,
Right.
and it would give you a feeling of where you were and where it was headed, and I think it worked really well.
Real Fast Talker would like to ask, on his blog, Jack mentioned a movie he was making or planning, I think called Can't Help Falling. I was wondering if there was any new info about the movie.
The new info, I'm afraid, is the old info, which is trying to raise the money. We were oh so close.
This is a movie that you've written?
This is a movie that I have written.
Okay.
A friend of mine, Tom Verica, will direct it, and we're getting there. We're getting there, but we were very, very close to having it. And then, you know, the bottom fell out of the economy, and I cannot tell you how many people's movies have sort of gone. But you know, things are coming back, so we're you know, trying to get it back on the docket.
What can you talk about? Is the genre of the movie?
Genre of the movie is a comedic drama. So it's a love triangle between a younger man and who steals his uncle's fiancée.
And you would be the uncle?
I would be the uncle. I would. I'm not the younger man.
Okay. That would be a different kind of movie.
The days of being an ingenue, I'm afraid, that train done left the station.
Hey, and Google Dynasty if you want to see a young male ingenue.
Yeah, you want to see some shocking blonde hair.
Some shocking blonde hair.
They don't make it that blonde anymore.
That's right.
I don't think the peroxide has that kind of potency anymore.
Is the nephew cast? Is the
yes, but it's a bit.
I know you can't talk.
No, I just can't because it's not real yet.
Sure,
until you know, you're in pre-production and all the money's in the bank. It's not real yet, but we're very happy with the actors who want to do this.
Kind of committed. You have written and produced a short that was made already as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a short called Studio City.
And what was that?
It's sort of imagine sort of a middle-aged Entourage. It's a little bit like that. Dark comedy. And it came out really well. It's gotten everybody work but me.
Well, you're doing okay.
Doing okay. Had nothing to do with Studio City.
No one's playing that violin.
I know. And I'm trying to pull those heartstrings.
Do you have a writing background? Did you just kind of pick it up on a whim? Did you have writing influences?
I don't have a writing background other than you know, just read
Reading
6
million
scripts and
that's a background.
Many plays. So yeah, my background is as an actor, obviously, and I have and had to learn the craft to a certain degree, and I would still call myself a fledgling writer, but It does come naturally to me, and everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and so you build on the strengths and try to improve the weaknesses, and I feel like I'm getting there.
Sounds good. Well, I look forward to help you pull that together.
I hope so.
The Bebop. Does Sylar creep you out even though you know it's just Zachery Quinto?
You know what? Sylar creeps me out. Zachery does not. Zachery is one of the funniest, sweetest guys. You've met him. You've had him on the show. He's incredibly intelligent, very funny, really good actor. And he and I worked together right off the bat. I remember. I think I was the first actor he met on the show, and there's been this big buildup of Sylar. Who's it going to be? And then I remember meeting him in the trailer and just sitting around talking. It was the Homecoming episode, and I think he maybe just appeared sort of as a silhouette with a hat and everything. And we just talked for about an hour, and I just thought, this guy's going to be really good. He's going to really take off in this role. And sadly, I was wrong.
Well, another example, we had Adam Armisen and Kay Foster on the show, and they were talking about how, his role wasn't necessarily meant to be what it is.
No.
And he ran with it and blew up with it.
Yeah, he ran it, and he's an appealing psychopath is gold, and he's funny and he's charming, and he enjoys his nasty work, and then he has moments of great angst and uncertainty, and if you put together sort of Sylar's greatest hits, not just of his killing people, but to watch him, sort of some of the best moments that he's had on the show. Some of them have been actually very emotional and very raw, and some of them have been hysterically funny, and Zach can do all of that.
We talked briefly before we came on. This answer kind of reminded me of it. The process of auditioning for producers to get a series regular role, and you were saying how you might not have gotten the role if it was originally intended to be a series regular role.
Yeah,
Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I believe that it's getting a series regular role from the traditional way of testing at the network has just gotten so much harder, and all it takes is one person in the room to go, I don't think it's him, and then all the cards fall apart in your little house of cards. And the great thing about starting the way I did on this show is that you get to sort of, you're auditioning as you go. And if you're smart, you're auditioning. But you have a chance to do it in real world situations, because there are people who are brilliant auditioners who are not brilliant actors. And there are people who are bad auditioners who are brilliant actors. So it's auditioning and acting are two completely different skills. And they don't even have that much to do with each other, believe it or not. So it's, I think this worked out, could not have been better for me, that it was a small role that steadily built as they saw that it was working.
It's the most necessary skill, because once you get the job, you no longer
there's nothing
need to
without
do it.
it. There's nothing without it. I remember seeing an interview with William Macy, and he just talked about how his only ambition as an actor was never to have to audition again. And he said, because even when you get it, that scene that you auditioned with remains this poison nugget in the middle of the script. I just thought that was such a great description of it, a poison nugget. On the upside, you already know those lines, so you probably don't have to learn them again. But I know exactly what he means.
You betcha, William H. Macy. Nobody's Hippie wants to ask you, there have been a few changes behind the scenes on the show, some people leaving, etc. How has everyone been getting on as a whole without some of the writers and other figures who have been on the show since the start?
There are people who are gone. I mean, the people who are gone are missed, and you just sort of have to pick up the mantle and carry on. It's that's showbiz, unfortunately, and it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard when people who you really like and love to work with and aren't there anymore. But there's no security in this business, none. Zero.
Well, especially with a show that has a wall of death for its characters.
Well, exactly. We have this entire wall of death, and there's people on that wall of death who are actually acting on a regular basis on the show. So you can imagine how confusing that can be. But yeah, I mean, it's just hard. It's hard out there, and it's hard to lose people, and you just have to say, this is my job, and I show up and do it, and carry on.
What's your rehearsal process like on Heroes? And now that you're going into your 4th season, Do the producers, writers, do they come to you? Do you have influence on what happens with your character?
Well, two different questions, and keep me on track with them.
Sure.
But I'll start with the rehearsal thing, and that is, in general, there's not a lot of rehearsal in television. In general, you show up, you block it out, and you do it. And sometimes it's just, you just really can't believe that the camera's rolling. You're like, wow, I've been here 5 minutes and they're shooting, and it would be great to have more rehearsal. That's just not the nature of television. Having said that, there are certain scenes that get rehearsed a lot. One of the things I've loved about working with Allie this year is that Allie, if it's a substantial scene, she really kind of insists on rehearsal. And you know what? Scenes are better when they're rehearsed, and so I love doing that. And
Do you ever rehearse in a trailer with your fellow actors?
Oh yeah, running lines
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah, but that's different from really trying to flesh
Blocking
something
out,
out on its feet. It's important, and it is a kind of rehearsal, but it's not as in depth as figuring out the blocking, going through the motions, and also maybe deconstructing the script a little bit and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Now that actually leads me to the input question, and that is, I have to say that Heroes has been, and especially lately, very generous about trying to make sure that the actors feel comfortable with what they're doing, that they feel connected to what they're doing, that they're amenable to changes and suggestions, to a point, because you don't want the inmates running the asylum, and God knows a show that is run by actors would be inmates running the asylum. So you definitely need some adult supervision, but within that, actors often bring a lot to the table, and I think also sometimes people forget that actors can actually be problem solvers rather than just problem producers. And actors can actually help you get from where you are to where you need to be. So, and I feel like this year in particular, we're doing a lot
a
of
skilled
that.
actor like yourself, you're living the character 24/7. Whereas the writers, producers, they're living all of them 24/7. So you have, you maybe would have some unique insight.
There are times you remember things that other people don't, and there might be a continuity issue, or the fact that I believe it or not, I've never worked with him, so we have to be introduced, or there has to be something. Sometimes those things get forgotten. But on the other hand, there's a great David Milch story where an actor once came to him and said, my character wouldn't say that. And Milch said, "What the hell makes you think it's your character?" You know what I mean? It's ultimately we are serving the people who are creating the stories and who created the characters. But within that, you want to be heard, because especially in a fourth season of a show, you have a fairly clear idea of where you should be and where you shouldn't be. And there's sometimes they go, "Yeah, I know you haven't been there before, but we really want you to go there." And
they have their vision.
Yeah, they have their vision, and a lot of times being escorted in a direction you don't necessarily think you should be going in is the best thing. And so it's good to have somebody outside to be watching.
But it's more than just, "Hey Tim, can I talk to you for a second?" They have formal meetings with you guys.
Oh
right?
yeah, we'll have meetings.
Yeah.
We'll have meetings. We'll sit down and either talk about sort of long-term story, or a particular relationship, or a particular scene, or something that's going to happen, or how the hell am I going to sound like I can actually speak Japanese, or whatever. That wasn't. I didn't have a meeting about that, but there were a couple of meetings I wanted to have about that, but most of them were with psychiatrists.
Dref22 would like to ask, what goals do you have for your future? Would you want to work on another TV show? You wrote and acted in a short film called Studio City. Is this movie available somewhere?
Studio City is not available somewhere, but I think we're going to try to correct that. Making it downloadable. It's 41 minutes or something like that, which is a fairly substantial amount, especially.
That's a long short, yeah.
Yeah, it's a long short, and if you want to have a high quality, but I do want to make that available. I have no goals. I'm a shiftless actor. What can I say? No, I could see myself in another series. I think the big thing is I share a little bit of the William Macy feeling that I don't want to be out there with my hat in my hand. I'm too old. I have too many miles logged to want to just always be starting over, and that's the part of the business that becomes debilitating, and chases a lot of good people out of the business. So you just don't want to be, especially at a certain age, and if you're being judged by people who don't have nearly your resume or your knowledge of how things can work and how things can be, and it sometimes you can just feel like, ugh, I just really don't want to walk into that room with my hat in my hand. Having said that, this is the circus, and you joined the circus.
Right.
So there's a certain amount of that you just have to do. But I don't know that I necessarily. I mean, I'd love to do features. I want to do a comedy. I want to do a smart political thriller. There's lots of things I want to do, but mostly I want to keep working, doing things that are fulfilling.
Well, we talked about writing. What about directing? As shows like Heroes tend to move on in their season, sometimes you see the actors taking the directing reins of a particular episode. Could you see yourself or any of the actors that you work with on Heroes starting to direct?
I think most likely to direct is Adrian. I think that's almost certainly going to happen. He has done quite a bit of directing himself. I could see myself directing an episode if it were a smaller, more contained sort of drama, if there were a tremendous amount of effects. On television, the schedule like this, I've seen really good directors come onto our show and kind of get beaten to a pulp because it's a really hard show to direct in 8 or 10 days. I could see doing a certain kind of episode, but one that would require had a lot of effects and things, probably not so much.
Okay. Looking on IMDb, 2 directors that I see as having been credited with a lot of episodes are Greg Beeman and Alan Arkush. Is there a difference between a Beeman directed episode and an Arkush directed one? Do they have their own signature, if you will?
They do, and unfortunately, those are 2 people who are no longer on the show. I believe that one or more of them might come back to do some more directing. They've both moved on to other shows and are doing very well. Alan Arkush directed Company Man. Alan is a guy who's an encyclopedic knowledge of film and popular music like you wouldn't believe. But Alan has a real sort of theatrical sense of character. He understands character. He finds his way in through character, and he has so many ideas. Or this reminds me of this movie, and this could be like this director, and so you get a real cinematic sense of things from him. And he's directed several movies as well. Beeman is a guy who's great with the camera. He's fantastic, really extreme angles and pace and humor. And he's somebody who is just never at a loss of what to do with the camera. I've been very amazed at how sometimes what he can get in a short amount of time. Really complex looking scenes in a very short amount of time.
Generally speaking, how many different directors do you work with in a season?
A lot, actually, because it's a killer of a show. You can only have so many people do so many episodes, and so we've had a lot this year in particular. We've had a lot of new directors, new to us. None of them are new directors. Trust me, they would be sawdust in the first day. They crying to their mama.
Bottom would like to ask you. It's a Dynasty question. I have a feeling back in the 80s and 90s, you would have made a lot of money if you got $1 every time this one was asked. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. What was it like playing one of the first gay characters in prime time? Were you worried about being typecast?
It's interesting. That's the first time anyone's ever.
Wow, there you go. You wouldn't have made any money on that one.
No, I've been asked that a lot. I was 24 years old. Was I going to say no? No. So it was not a hard decision. It was not a hard character to play. It would be played very differently today than it was then. It would be so much more graphic. I'm not sure that would have been good or bad. I think that you know, they always waffled. He was gay, but he was married, and you know, it was, and
Still
so
had some good scenes with Heather Locklear, right?
had some, yeah, had a couple of makeout scenes with Heather Locklear, and that was really tough to live through. But I soldiered on.
But seriously though, it really was different times back then.
Yeah,
you know, we take it
very
for
much so.
granted now. You couldn't imagine. I mean, that was really was it something you talked about with
It
your
was
family?
groundbreaking.
Did you talk about it with your family before you took it? Your
No.
representation? No, it was right away. You knew.
No, no. There was no question whether or not I was going to do the role.
Right on.
I mean,
the show was already established because you would replace someone.
Show was established. It hadn't become the mega hit that it was about to become when I started, but it was on its way, well on its way.
But you would replace someone who was playing.
I
the
replaced
same
Al
role.
Corley,
Right.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think Al would agree with me that he didn't have any qualms about it either.
Right.
It just wasn't a hard decision to make.
Right.
You know, I remember a million years ago, back in the day, someone said to me, they couldn't pay me to do that part. And I went, oh, yes, they could.
Right. Right.
I know a lie when I hear one.
HRG, I love it. Blue Rivers, do you get to keep the glasses, speaking of HRG?
No. The reality is they actually don't make those glasses anymore. So there's about, I don't know, maybe 8 that they've got in props, and they're not going anywhere. They got to hold on to them. So and they're not actually corrective lenses, and I require corrective lenses, so there wouldn't be that much in it for me.
I have a feeling they are going to wind up in a TV museum.
I hope so. I hope so.
We were talking about, you know, the writing and the input that you get to have. Can you think of 2 scripts that you picked them up, and one of them you were like, yes, I'm going to get to do this today, and one of them where you were like, huh, I'm going to have to do that, and then you had to really, the actor and you had to work to make it work?
The answer to both of those is yes. I'm not sure that I can or want to give you an example of the second one.
Okay.
The first one, yeah, I mean, there's all, you know, to be honest with you, when I first read the thing, the scene where I spoke Japanese for 2.5 pages, after I, you know, picked my jaw up off the floor, I thought, well, this is going to be cool. It's going to be hard. I'm going to learn it, but it's going to be cool. And it was cool. So there are things like that. And when I like a big epic battle with Sylar, and I know that Zach and I are going to have a good time, and we did. We just pounded the daylights out of each other for like 8 hours, and for a 30-second fight scene. It's like, really? I lost my rotator cuff for that? But I did get to slice his neck with a box cutter, and so at the end of the day, it's all worthwhile.
Was it
good, clean fun?
Was it different the few episodes you got to work with him as he was your partner temporarily? You formed this alliance?
Yeah, that was fun. It was a little odd because it happened very quickly, and to shift those gears, obviously. The great thing about it is at the end of one of those episodes, I have a scene with Jimmy Jean-Louis, who plays the Haitian, and he says to me, am I being replaced? And I say, only for a while until I figure out his weakness, and then I'm going to kill him. And so it was a nice, because I think some people must have felt like, wait a minute, how are these two supposed to be, cooperating when they're mortal enemies? And you saw that they still were mortal enemies. And so I just took it as keep your keep your enemies close, your friends close, and your enemies closer, and tried to look at it from that perspective. But it was a lot of fun to do that, and Zach and I just had a he got to do this in New York. He was playing this pretending to be a New York cop, right. And so he got to bust out his New York accent, and we had fun. We just sang songs in the car as we were towed around. So it was a good time.
And now that he's back from Star Trek, is he a Mr. Big Shot now, or is he the same?
Well, there's been a lot of changes. We're not allowed to make eye contact with him. We have to stay, I believe it is 50 feet from his person at all times, unless we are actually giving him money. So yeah, there's been a lot of unfortunate changes in Zach ever since Star Trek. No, Zach is Zach. He's great. He like all of us, from time to time we get swamped with things, and he said he's been on quite a roller coaster ride. So, he's busier than ever, but he's the greatest guy. I love him to death.
Another actor I want to talk about on the show with you, a great scene you had with your wife, Ashley Crowe, when you thought she was Sylar.
Yeah.
That was a pretty emotionally intense scene.
That was an emotionally intense, and that was a very draining day, and one of my favorite scenes that I've done on the show. I mean, Ashley is just the goods. She's the real deal. She's a real actor.
So again, Sylar's a shapeshifter, and you thought he had shifted into your wife.
Right, because he had earlier, and served me my divorce papers.
Right.
So last time I saw the person that looked like my wife, it was Sylar. So I go to him, her, and and with the intention of killing him, her.
And I mean, you're throwing her to the ground.
Yeah,
you got
so
the gun to her head.
Yeah, it got pretty raw.
Was it rough on her?
It was rough. I mean, it's not obviously we took great care to make sure that I wasn't at any time hurting her, but it's a pretty emotionally raw place to go to when anybody throws you down on a table, puts a gun to your head, and that's a real 45. That's cold hard steel at the back of your skull, and whether or not you're play acting, you get a sense of it.
Yeah, I thought you both did an outstanding job in that scene.
That was fun. That was a good scene to do. It was a lot of fun. It was fun in a very dark way.
Website guy would like to ask, what is the production like compared to non-effects based shows? Does it take much longer or take you out of the moment?
Yes, a show like Heroes with a lot of effects is much more time consuming, and there are times it can be challenging to stay in the moment. In general, it's not, but there's, I mean, it's not like it's not like some shows where you two people walk into a room, they sit down, they talk. I mean, we have scenes like that. We have scenes like that all the time, but there's a lot of effects, there's a lot of battles, and we don't have the time to do Spider-Man. We can't have it's not a $200 million thing, but within the constraints of television and our budget, we do a lot of it. So there's everybody's been on a harness, and everybody's been flying, and everybody's been acting with a green screen. And one of my favorite things is when Jimmy and I we're in Red Square in China, and we're just we're on a stage. We're at stage 7 of the Sunset Gower Studios, and
right.
We're walking literally. There's nothing but green on all around us, and the whole thing got put in. And I saw it before it was completely done, and it just it sort of kind of looked like a cartoon. And you go, oh my gosh, how's it? And then when they were really done with it, it looked amazing. It looked like we were in Red Square. So it's and then Macy and the pilot in Times Square, or circling around and everything. He wasn't in New York. He never went to New York. Right. It's all computer.
You mean he really can't time travel?
No, that he can do.
Oh, that he can do.
Yeah, that he can do. It's it is pretty remarkable actually when you see him do it.
That's right. Vegs would like to ask, has there ever been a role that you passed on that you now regret having given up?
Well, no, not now. Now I don't. Right. There were roles I passed on which soon thereafter I regretted. But it's all for a reason, and sometimes you forget that there's a reason that you passed on it later, and you go, oh my God, all this money, and I walked away, but you got to do a show that went to Broadway or whatever it was, so there are reasons, and you have to trust that you made it for a good reason at the time, because there are times you can look back and regret things, but that's a really futile exercise. Absolutely. So I don't do a lot of that.
What's your favorite show that you maybe guest starred on that you were only on 1 or 2 episodes of?
I had a lot of fun on Nip Tuck, even though my best scene got cut out. I was sick as a dog when I shot that show, but I really enjoyed it. Had a great time doing that. I had a lot of fun on Entourage. It was a pretty small part, but it was fun. I've done a lot of guest guest spots, and they're usually fun, but they're not as much fun as being a series regular.
No.
Because you're always the new guy.
Right.
You're never treated as well.
Right.
You're always trying to figure out. I try to be very considerate to guest stars because most of them are pretty big time actors in their own right.
Yeah.
And also it's just really hard to walk onto somebody else's set and you're cold and they don't know who you are and they don't care who you are and and they don't, a lot of times they don't know your name or learn your name, and the being an itinerant actor is not an easy gig.
Well, the question we like to get people out of here on is, do you have a favorite set term speak? For example, something like back to one or something.
This is one of those things. It's like, this is one of those questions which I've never been asked before, but it's a question similar to, tell me about your favorite practical joke. And I know they're there.
Right.
I can't, back to one. Sometimes when they say, it won't translate. No, we have a little theme song for me, which has started with the crew, and it was sung to the tune of Mr. Bojangles, because I'm Mr. Low Angles.
Okay.
Everything they shoot is this
Right.
horrible, iconic, shooting way up, so you have no cheekbones, you have no jawline, you're just a mess of jowls and turkey neck. But it looks cool. It's a cool shot. It's just not that flattering. So that's Mr. Low Angles.
Fair enough, Mr. Low Angles. We're going to have to go out on that.
It's a little weak, but that's all I got at the moment.
Hey, it's something different,
It is different.
Anyone can say back to one.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap it up on that, Jack. It has been a pleasure having you on and meeting you.
Been my pleasure, thanks.
Continued success. And just one last reminder for everyone, Season 5, Redemption, this Monday, the 21st.
Season 4.
Season 4.
Volume 5. See? The math's tricky.
In my head, I was like, am I
It's
getting
tricky.
this right?
I just consulted my slide rule.
Heroes, Monday, 8 p.m. Check it out. I know you will. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time on Filmnut.